Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. I'm Jeanine Poggi, Senior Editor here at Ad Age, and I'm live today with Marla Kaplowitz, who's, of course, President and CEO of the 4As, and we're here to spend a little time this afternoon to discuss the do's and don'ts of brand marketing amid the pandemic. Hi, Marla.
Hi, Jeanine. Nice to see you.
See you. How are you holding up?
Holding up fine. There's a lot to keep me busy and focused right now. Thank you. How are you doing?
I'm good. Things are changing so quickly. I think we're all just trying to figure out how we get on, in the day to day and move forward right now.
Great.
Where are you working from right now?
I'm working from home, so that means I alternate between my bedroom slash office slash gym or the dining area. So I'm actually standing right now, which feels so nice because I've been sitting all morning at my desk and my back starts to hurt after sitting all day. I'm used to being in the office with a standing desk. So I think mixing it up is so important right now. You got to get a change of scenery and just stretch and do whatever you can to keep your energy going.
Absolutely. And even just like getting up and going and get a glass of water in the
Yes.
office, and you have to actually like walk around as opposed to just moving over to the kitchen and getting a glass of
Yeah.
water. I feel like my step count has gone down dramatically.
Definitely. It is definitely having an impact on that. And I know many people right now feel like working from home feels like working nonstop because there isn't that separation. There isn't even that commuting time. Your commuting time is less than a minute at this point to get to wherever you need to. So it's really important just to build in those breaks and to build in those opportunities to get a stretch, to even just to get a glass of water.
So, and there's no differentiator in the weekend either. So, come Friday, it's nice to say it's Friday, but really there's nothing to do on the weekend. So it's very easy to just get sucked back into your email and go on Slack and all of that. And there's definitely like no line being drawn of like, okay, time to turn off.
No, we need to create new routines for ourselves and also new boundaries.
Absolutely. And, that's, part of what brands are thinking about and need to do
Mhm.
as well at this point. 4As, I know, has been doing a lot of research and is out there and talking to people about what do consumers want from brands right now? What do they
Yeah.
need from brands right now? What are you sort of advising at this point as brand practices? Do consumers want to hear from brands right now?
Consumers do want to hear from brands, but you have to make sure that the message is right. And so, what marketers need to do is really double down on those messages, but really focus in on those customer relationships and not just think short term, but think about the long term. That is so important to get it right. And brands have the opportunity to really build those relationships and to think about how they are there to support, how they can live their brand purpose and really see that come to life. But the most important thing I would say is not for brands to think of this as an opportunity to take a pause. Continuity is so important right now. And I was connecting in with some marketers last week, obviously talking to a lot of agency leaders, and they've all learned the lesson from the past when there have been economic slowdowns. And they know that it's so important to maintain that brand equity, to retain that relationship and that connection, but it's about the messages. What are you communicating with people at this time? How do you make sure that they understand that you are there, that you are supporting them? But it's also a bit of a pivot in understanding what customers are going through right now, what consumers are experiencing. How is your brand relevant for people when they're in a stay-at-home environment? What is the shift that you need to make? How do you think about what your utility is? And make sure you're not being tone deaf. And there are some brands out there that are really hitting it right and recognizing that they need to make that shift to really connect in with people in the right way, and not just their current customers, but how do you build new relationships?
Right. It's interesting talking about whether or not it's the right time to even go out there with any messaging at all. And you're saying that it is like you shouldn't be going dark just
Yeah.
because this is going on. And Magna actually released a new forecast today for the ad sales for the U.S. And as part of that, they said this sort of something very similar, that in the recession, that it was actually for the brands that paused marketing, it was harder for them to come
Yes.
back once things were over. So that does seem to be an overriding practice right now, is to keep going if you can.
Yes, I think that's so critical. And we have a lot of similar research that we did following the recession that we've been dusting off because a lot of people have been asking for that. And then we've also been partnering with a consumer sentiment research company called Suzy, just to make sure that we understand what do consumers want right now. And they're open to these messages. Remember, brands have relationships with these customers, and it exists in various ways, but brands exist in the mind of the consumer. And so maintaining a relationship, especially for many brands, people are relying on those brands right now for support, but making it about the people and not about the brand. So there are some brands that are hyper focused right now on changing their logos, and having fun is important, but how can you make sure that you are helping people? And how do you show that you're not just focusing on yourself, but you're not talking just about a message? You're actually focusing on, maybe it's shifting your messaging to talk about your employees, particularly for people who are in the grocery category. Think of the heroes that are in the grocery stores right now, making sure that people can go and shop and get food. So really shifting the dynamic, because we're all thinking differently about the experiences we're having.
So what is the right tone? Is it okay to be lighthearted at this time? There's a lot of serious stuff going on, and I do think that consumers probably want a little bit of a break from all of that, but is it okay to be lighthearted, or what is the right tone to take?
I think if you're gonna, so if you have to be, if you want to be lighthearted, because we all know that we need a little bit of levity in our lives. And if you look at a lot of the content out there that's doing well, comedy is doing well. People are actually responding to the posts that are putting a smile on their face, or just kind of take a moment away from the seriousness of what's going on. But you do have to temper that with what people are experiencing, and make sure you put out the right communication, and know that you understand what's happening, but there are ways to do it. You look at, there are various brands showing how people are using products differently. We see a lot of celebrities doing some different types of posts, and how different brands can just take advantage of that, I think is really critical at this moment. I've been so impressed with the way brands are stepping up, not just in advertising, but with the way that they're shifting their manufacturing and their product development. There's a great resource on the Chamber of Commerce website. You can go and type in any brand and see what that brand is doing to help the coronavirus situation right now, whether that's manufacturing hand sanitizer, masks, not incubators, I'm getting the word wrong, ventilators. I was thinking of intubation, but ventilators, and all these companies shifting their focus. I think that's really important to make sure that it isn't just about the advertising, but what brands are doing, and not in a self-serving way, because you have to really play that right too, where you don't want to be out saying we're kind of a pat on the back saying, oh, we're doing all these wonderful things for people, but do it in a very respectful way that acknowledges the loss that people are feeling right now, whether that's their job, the connection to live sports, which is a real livelihood for people, the ability to have the freedom that they're used to, the challenge where parents are now playing the role of caregiver, potentially to both their parents as well as young children, as well as trying to manage their workload and also cook at the same time. It's really challenging. And so how can you help people in their daily lives? Back to, if people are at home, what does the use of your brand look like? And then how can you help communicate that? We know media consumption is up. I mean, social media is up 20%, if not higher. News consumption is up. Television viewing is up. How can you use those opportunities to connect in a different way? And depending upon the environment, people are looking for a break. If you're on Instagram or TikTok, that's going to be a little bit different than if you're watching the nightly news.
Right. And I want to talk about some platforms later, but so
Sure.
it really seems like it's less about promoting product in this environment, more maybe talking about like corporate social responsibility and just the things that essentially a brand is doing to help out in whatever way that they can.
Fully agree. It is not, it may be about selling product if that product is relevant, but it's more about reminding people and hopefully getting in messages that are really critical right now, like stay at home, like washing your hands, social distancing. Those messages need to come through as much as possible. So if brands can really continue to push those messages out, as well as supporting the PSAs that are out there, that will help everyone.
The Forest released a research study recently, and what did you find as it relates to how consumers are reacting to brand communications at this time?
So the interesting thing about that research was there was only about 15% of consumers that were not interested in brand advertising at this time. The majority want to hear from brands and actually want to know what they're doing to help during the crisis.
Okay.
And then we also saw slight differences between demographics. So younger people are definitely more open than older people, depending upon what the message is and the tone.
I want to give a shout out to a few people who are watching today. We have Audrey from Belgium, William from Sweden, Fernando from Brazil, Betsy from Miami, and Jocelyn from Tennessee. Thank you for joining us. And of course, if you have any questions or comments and want to participate, feel free to ask away on our social channels.
Great, such an international crowd.
Yeah. So one of the things I'm sort of thinking about as we're looking at all the different types of communication. I don't know, me personally, I'm getting a ton of emails from brands, both local mom and pop shops from like my neighborhood that I frequent, and then just like the big retail chains. What do you make of this? At some point, does it feel like spam? Does it sometimes feel too much if every brand that you've ever shopped from or like even your email to is all of a sudden bombarding you with these emails?
Yeah, I think it gets back to what is the relationship that you have with that particular brand. So I'm getting those same emails, and typically I'm on a list or I have a membership or a subscription. So I have a relationship that exists. What I think is shocking for people are the emails they're getting from companies that they haven't shopped with in over a year or longer. And getting an email that says, "We're here for you," feels a little false in that environment. I don't know how much telemarketing is going on right now. I can tell you that I took a cruise with my family many years ago, and that cruise company has now called my home twice. And the message they left the first time was focused on, "Hey, we think you'd be interested in taking a cruise with us." Not 2021, but hey, we have some great deals going on now. And it just felt like the wrong time and actually really turned me off to that company. Yeah. So for the emails and for any communication, think about what is the relationship that you have. If it's from long ago, people may not want to be hearing from you. And if so, what are you doing to try and earn back that connection or that loyalty if it's been lost? And I do appreciate the emails I am getting from brands that I do have constant connection with and the messages that are there. And I know people are feeling very overwhelmed with how do you keep up with all the communication and what is coming at them. But some of those messages are helpful. Some of them are still a little bit promotionally oriented versus really focusing in on the current situation. I'm really happy when I'm getting an email. I'll give you an example, like Birch Coffee, which I was going to every day in my building, is saying, "Hey, do you want to help out our people that are in the store that actually can't work right now? Do you want to give them an extra tip? Do you want to buy a gift card and we'll up the value that you can use later?" Those are great ways for people to help just stay connected, but more importantly, feel like they're helping in some way. I know many people feel very helpless. And so those kind of messages that are tapping into the philanthropy side, I think are terrific.
But that's also because you frequent that place daily.
Correct. Correct. I have a relationship with that brand.
Right. So if that was a brand that, like you said, you hadn't shopped in a year or perhaps never did and just gave them your email address, you might be more annoyed than, eager to help.
I'd be dismissive.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
Email is definitely one of the areas I think we've seen a lot of brands using. Yeah. What platforms right now do you think are better suited for these types of messaging, or are there certain places, whether it's TV, digital, social, that perhaps are a better place to lean into right now?
So everyone's home. So email feels very natural for a lot of people because they're checking their email. People are using all the platforms. So it's how do you leverage every platform, but think about what the messaging is in the right way. So if you are in one of the social media platforms, it's a very different message that you want to put out there. A lot of people are connecting in with family, friends, looking for a little bit of a break. I know for me, that's like a little moment in the evening, like eating my dinner. I just want a little bit of a mental break. But when I want to know what's seriously going on in the world, I'm turning on the TV and I'm listening to the news, and I want to know, and it's a little bit more of a serious tone for what's happening. But podcasts, when I can get out in the morning to take a walk, listening to some podcasts to understand what's happening. So the media consumption is there. The messages have to just acknowledge what is happening. So I wouldn't ignore it, but you also don't want to, as we talked earlier, be too lighthearted, but you need to also know what your brand does for someone in their life. And if your brand is about those moments of lightheartedness or levity, then you have permission, because you've done that in the past, to continue that way. If you're a more serious brand, to try and pivot off of that, it doesn't work.
Right. And it certainly feels like streaming, when you're thinking of platforms, is going to have a big moment, talking about everyone being home and being able to, watch TV during the day. Daytime TV ratings are up.
Yes.
Areas that just a couple of weeks ago, perhaps marketers may have forgotten about or not been as interested in.
Yeah, so out of home is obviously on the decline. That is probably the one medium that is really suffering right now, while all other consumption is going up.
We got a message from Ursula. I enjoy getting the emails from brands, I'm presuming. I like to compare the copy from brands. That's an interesting study, maybe, when this is all.
That's clearly someone who is in marketing. And I have to say, I've been getting a lot of emails from different companies, more so on the marketing side, about different webinars they're doing and different ways that they're taking live events and converting them to virtual. And it is interesting to see how people are pivoting and reacting fairly quickly.
Yeah. And we have a question from Julie. Can you advise on how B2B brands should look to communicate with their clients that are being impacted?
This is a great point, because you already have a relationship with those customers, but you also have to recognize that they're being inundated by lots of emails. And I have the same experience as we're trying to reach out to members. You actually have to make it a little more personal. So where you have relationships, where you have salespeople and different ways of connecting in with them beyond just email, you need to take advantage of that. So you need to make sure you're keeping all forms of communication open and up to date, whether that's your website, social media, but you also need more of a personal touch, because right now everything you're doing is very one way, and you need to make sure that you're getting a reaction, you're getting a response, especially from your most important customers. If you're seeing any sort of lapse, especially if you can track them, you need to find ways to go about that and reach out to them and make sure that you are providing them with whatever they need. It's great to say, hey, we're here for you, but as much as you can really lean in, emphasize the value of what you bring and what you have brought and what you will continue to do for that customer. I think that's critical right now. Is it really comes down to, what is your core value? It isn't about all the superfluous nice things that you've been talking about. What are they getting as that value? Because everyone is looking at finances very differently today. And it isn't nice to have, it's must have, need to have. So if you can shift that dynamic, I think that's critical right now. Does that help, Julie?
Hopefully we answered Julie's question.
Okay.
What are some of the things that brands should absolutely not do right now? Like any things that are just a hard no?
Do not make it about yourself at all. It is not just about you. You need to have empathy in this situation. You need to recognize what people are going through. And you can't all of a sudden say you're a serious brand and do funny things, which I don't think that they would. But you don't want to suddenly shift from who you are as a brand or what you do. I think this is a real test for brands who talk about purpose and authenticity. If they aren't delivering on that, it will be found out very quickly. And if they try to shift away from where they are, if you have a strong foundation and you stick with that, those brands will be fine. It's those that are on a rocky foundation, didn't have a core purpose, core mission. You're going to start to see what happens to those brands. And obviously that's separate from the categories that are just being impacted, like hospitality and travel, that it's out of their control with what's happening right now. But for the other brands, they really need to think a little bit differently. I'm more concerned with the brands that just are worried about getting the tone right and just retreating altogether. I think that's not the right move. How do you find what the message needs to be and how you stay the course, even if that's helping to support telling people, wash your hands, stay home. Here's how our people, our employees humanize it. This is about humanity right now. And as much as you can, if it is going to be about you and your company, make it about your people, because this is about people at the core. And if you can humanize it, I think you will get the emotional connection and reaction that you desire.
We have a question, and I'm sorry if I get your name wrong. It's from Sandihavi. Interested in knowing how this situation affects the advertisements in Times Square. What communication should brands use for such high visibility areas in the time of this crisis?
Yeah, interestingly, Coca-Cola took their billboard in Times Square and did an ad where they showed Coca-Cola lettering far apart to communicate social distancing. A lot of those billboards, interestingly, in Times Square are long-term. So brands need to be sensitive to, if you are in long-term deals, you need to look into that. Obviously, there's not a lot of foot traffic there. So how can you actually get cameras there or communicate out what's happening? High visibility areas should be used as a way to communicate the need of the moment, reminding people. There's a lot of digital billboards in Times Square to stay home, washing their hands. There's very little traffic going through. There's very little, there's not much, there's few pedestrians as well as cars going through that area. Back to my point that out of home is really experiencing a challenging time right now. I was saying to someone that the best place for people to advertise right now would be in the parks, because that's where people are gravitating. Obviously not going to happen, but that is really where people are congregating as much as they possibly can.
Yeah. Any brands that are really getting it right now?
I think there's a few brands that are really getting it right and understands the situation. There's a new ad from AB InBev with Bud, and they sort of shifted this whole dynamic of what's going on with the stadiums and baseball to take the names of baseball teams and really talk about the real heroes. So they're showing pictures of workers in the subways and they're the Yankees, and the healthcare workers are the Angels, and the people who are the Braves, and just back to humanizing the situation. And what I think is most amazing about the ads that are doing it well is communicating either overtly or in a very subtle way that we're all in this together and we need to support one another. And that to me is the ultimate message and what is really powerful. And you see Nike talking about playing indoors, and that's okay, right? Just think about it a little bit differently. And that's so core to who they are as a brand. And to tell people you can play inside, that's okay. There's just a different way to actually manifest that. So the most impressive thing to me has been the brands that reacted the fastest, like Ford, went from, I think they said on a Thursday, they decided they needed to change out their advertising. And by Monday had 2 new spots, one using stock footage and one just using blue screen with text. But people are not looking for fancy, high production quality right now. They just want the right messages. So get those out there and reassure people. People definitely need reassurance right now because there are too many unknowns.
Yeah. We got another question, Marissa on Facebook. Does it make sense to launch a brand social channel during this time?
I'm curious how long the brand's been around. So I know there are a number of brands who've not been on TikTok, for example, that are thinking about going on TikTok. I think that that's perfectly fine if it's done in the right way and it feels authentic to your brand. And if you had already planned to be entering into new social channels, the goal right now is to reach out to people, whether they're your current customers or not. So if you can do that in a way that doesn't feel self-serving and it's about getting the right message out, I think that's perfectly appropriate. I mean, brands have a real role right now in a way that government doesn't. And you can see this if you look at the Edelman Trust Barometer survey year after year, and particularly this year. People don't really quite know where to turn to trust. And so if they can look to a brand to get the right kind of information, that is one way that a brand can really help.
We talked about some of the brands that are doing it right, any that are completely missing the mark.
So I'm not going to call them out by name, but I will tell you what I have seen. These are ads for apparel, and I don't know that people are really looking to go shopping right now for clothing. I have seen some at least recognize that it's not the most appropriate time, and they're connecting it to a philanthropic message, which does have value, to say we're going to donate X% of our money back. Or we'll donate, Ryan Reynolds is pushing aviation gin. If you buy it, he'll donate 30% to a bartender relief. Those are the kind of messages that they're doing business, but at least they're connecting it to a way to provide some sort of charitable donation to the people that will need it most.
Clothing is an interesting one, as many people wear like button-down shirts up top and sweatpants on the bottom,
Yes.
a whole new fashion statement being made in the
well, I'll tell you, I have like new sneakers that I've been dying to wear. Those are not going to get worn for a while. Instead, I went and purchased another pair of my UGG slippers that I wear all around my apartment because they're the most comfortable, and I'm probably going to wear them out in the next few weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's bring in, we have our agency reporter, Lindsay Rittenhouse. We've been talking obviously so far about
Hi, Lindsay.
Hey, Lindsay.
Hey.
But it would be great to talk about how agencies should be responding to all of this. So who better than Lindsay to come in and join this conversation?
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, I've been talking to a lot of agencies who are obviously concerned right now. I guess I'm curious your thoughts on how agencies should be communicating with clients who are, hesitant to put out messages right now, sort of pause marketing, but maybe could still be doing marketing efforts, and like what they should be saying to them.
So what I'm pleased about, if there's anything to be pleased about what's happening right now, is that this is a real opportunity for agencies to shine and to show the power of partnership with those companies. And that's what I'm hearing from agencies, that they are having the right kind of conversations. They are in there helping them. And this is where the value really comes through. And they are trying to make sure that their brands, the marketers that they work with, are staying the course and are maintaining some sort of continuity. Obviously, if you're in the hotel or airline category, that's very different because there is no inventory really at that moment. And so those are categories that are taking a pause. But for other categories, agencies are making sure that they're getting out there, that they're addressing the creative message. There was a big shift to make sure that any content that had social contact was pulled or adjusted so that there are no messages out there about hugging and kissing, shaking hands, and that's also communicating social distancing. So I've seen the agencies really step up because they do well in these moments. Agencies focus on how to figure it out, how to think differently, and how to leverage their creativity. And there are a lot of constraints right now, as we talked about earlier. You can't do live action shoots right now. You're using stock footage. But in some ways, the constraints have actually allowed creativity to flourish more. And I think we will continue to see that.
Yeah. And for agencies, maybe independent ones where their business is primarily in events or their clients are being hit the hardest by all this, I mean, what can they do to stabilize their business?
So for the experiential agencies, I know have had a tough time. I'm hoping that they're going to think differently about what an experience means, what an event means, how to think about virtual events. I saw a great event last week from a small consultancy called Nobel called Change at Work. And it was a full day event of webinars, breakout sessions, and it went extremely well. I popped in for a little bit, but it's not the actual in-person connection, but that you can get the kind of exposure and connection in chat rooms and hearing from the experts, I do think is important. What those businesses are also doing is making sure that they think not just about the short term, but the long term, because those brands will come back. Those opportunities will come back. Many agencies are looking overall at their employee base, assessing freelance work versus what they can do to make sure that they stay strong. To your point, the smaller independent agencies are looking at options where they furlough some employees, which means that they stay on, but maybe they don't need someone working remotely who's meant to be a receptionist when there's no office that is open. So they're just making sure that they're prepared. We're very grateful that the stimulus package has finally gone through. We just sent out communication today to our members, really helping them understand how to process all of the details. It's pretty complex, but particularly for companies with 500 or fewer individuals, there are some small business loan opportunities out there for them. And I believe we will continue to see more and more offerings like that to help people and to make sure that the economy recovers and recovers quickly.
And, you know, I saw one initiative by this agency in Minneapolis, Media Bridge Advertising. The CEO came out and she was like, you know, we're waiving certain client fees. I mean, is that something you would recommend?
So I would not recommend that every agency take the same action. I truly believe that it is up to each agency and each client to assess what their needs are based on the way that their current relationship is defined and figure that out. But I do think it's important to have conversations to make sure that clients continue, that agencies can continue to partner with them. I was really pleased to see Unilever is considering helping agencies with payment terms, especially some of their smaller suppliers and vendors that they work with, to make sure that they stay solvent. I think that's a terrific move. And it's an opportunity for agencies to make sure that they're there for clients, but agencies are in business too. And so everyone is in this together, quite frankly, as we all are figuring this out.
We have a question and a comment from Dave Edwards on Facebook.
Hi, Dave.
It's always sunny when Marla is around. And also, how do you feel about brands launching agency pitches during this crisis?
This has been a question that we've been getting a lot, and we've been trying to help agencies deal with the virtual pitching. I think a lot of people were surprised to see new pitches coming about when we saw Kraft Heinz announce that they were doing their big global pitch. Clearly, those things don't just happen. They've been planned for a while. And so people have made the determination not to put that on pause and to continue. We are not in a situation where it's business as usual. We keep saying it's business unusual. So how do we think differently? I do see that this can be a challenging time for everyone. Agencies are shoring up resources, making sure they're there for their current clients. So trying to manage new business activity and new business activity can be a little bit challenging amidst everything that's going on. It's also a very different dynamic when you're pitching virtually. And so people are getting used to that. And I worry that people are not all comfortable being on camera and behaving a little bit differently. And we all know that the first meeting in any new business pitch is called chemistry. And everyone has to figure out chemistry in a very different way. But when you're not with your team physically, it really shifts the dynamic. So I think it would be great for some of the pitching to slow down, but we also have to remember that pitching is important and it's the lifeblood of agencies. And it is important for agencies to have the opportunity to continue to be in that environment and to get new business, especially in this climate right now. And it does reinforce that business is continuing to go on. Brands still need to look at different agencies for projects, because don't forget, a lot of work is also very project-based. So there still is project work going on out there. What I would say is, do you need to have such a rigorous process. Maybe this is the opportunity for us once and for all to shorten the cycle of the new business pitching process. It just has gone on too long, adding meeting after meeting. And the reality is that many clients, if you ask them, they generally know after the first meeting, if not the second, who they're going to hire. It's very much an emotional decision, and it's about the relationship. And if you know that you're hiring an agency and you can see the work they've done and the case studies, whether that's PR, media, creative, do you really need to go through all these extensive meetings to make sure you're hiring the right kind of partner? Because that's what you're hiring.
It's an interesting point in terms of being able to have that chemistry over video, the virtual chemistry, and also being creative in an atmosphere where you're not with your coworkers and you're home and you're isolated. How are you thinking about that, about keeping that creativity? And what are some of the things, that you're doing to stay creative?
Yeah, I think that's so important. And I've been talking about that with my team. And I know that they've been talking about that with members, because I truly believe that amidst chaos, creativity thrives, and this is an opportunity for us to see some pretty amazing creativity. We've heard from some agencies where they're offsetting the cost of high-speed broadband to make sure that the people that are actually doing some of the most truly creative work, and that the tools that they're using and the access they need, that they have it. But people are figuring out new ways to partner and collaborate. There's a new tool that someone just told me about called Spatial, where you can do kind of AR, VR, and you can work in a very virtual way. So people are testing new things. And I think that's also really exciting right now, about how do you make it a little bit different. And I'm trying to get my team, we've been doing daily updates to the team, myself and my COO, Adam, and just trying to keep people motivated and giving them updates on what's going on with members, what we're hearing, but also back to keeping it a little lighthearted, sharing what members are creating and making sure that people know that they need to take a break at the end of the day, and just sharing some of the fun things that are going on out there. And we just saw a post, Mike Kagan from Cole McVoy just had a post about how do you kind of keep it a little bit lighter, or just give people the ability to smile. So he started wearing a sport coat and tie every day, which he never wears to the office, but he decided he was going to start dressing up for work from home, and he posted it on LinkedIn, and he said he got more likes from that than any other post he's ever shared. Again, people are looking for a little break in the day. One thing I'm doing to try and stay connected with my team is I call it virtual lunch. So every Friday we're doing virtual lunch, and it's the massive Brady Bunch Zoom screen. I'll show you a picture, actually.
Yeah,
Love that.
Because I took a picture last week, because there were 3 of these pictures, because I just thought it's just so fun, right? Like everybody's having lunch together and chatting. And I know other agencies have done similar things. I saw the Good Bee toilet paper toss. And it's just a reminder that this is a business of people, and that we're connecting, and everybody is experiencing stress and anxiety. But if we can just kind of put a smile on everyone's face for just a few minutes every day, I think that's really positive.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Lindsay, for jumping on here.
Thanks, Lindsay. Nice to see you.
Thank you.
Marla, thank you so much for joining us today and being part of this, and stay well. And we hope to talk to you again soon.
Thank you. Bye, Jeanine.
Bye.
Bye.